What's going on, guys? Sticks here with the Token Minorities, bringing you another deck on Pokemon TCGO, and today I'm bringing you another Burning Shadows deck, and this is one centered around Golisopod-GX. And before I get into the deck, just a reminder that if you guys like this video or found it helpful, please leave a like, drop a comment, and click that subscribe button. It helps us out a ton and lets us do more cool stuff for you guys. And as for the question of the day, this was a deck that I really debated doing. Like, well, this version of this deck anyway. Obviously, I was going to do a Golisopod deck, but it was just a matter of whether or not I wanted to use this version because it has Forest Giant Plants, which we all know is going to get the good old boot in the next rotation. So, like, even in Expanded, it won't even be useful. So I really went back and forth about whether or not I wanted to do this deck, considering it wouldn't be relevant for that very long. In fact, I think at the day this video goes up, it will be relevant for, I think, like 7 more days because of that good old Banhammer. Also, really quickly, if you guys want just nothing but post-rotation decks from Burning Shadows, because, I mean, I'm doing a lot of pre-rotation, which aren't going to be relevant in a little bit, but I just wanted to have some fun with these decks and do some ideas that I already had. Go check out my boy Orabomb. He is doing nothing but post-rotation decks with cards from Burning Shadows. So yeah, check him out. He does a lot of post-rotation, and he also does a lot of other cool stuff. So definitely not a shameless plug at all that I'm throwing in right there. Yeah, go check him out if you want a lot of post-rotation stuff. But I still decided to do it just because it's such a fun deck to use, and I've really enjoyed testing it, so I decided, you know what, even though it's only okay for 7 days, I might as well try it. And that got me thinking, well, Forest Giant Plants is obviously busted because each player's grass Pokemon can evolve during his or her first turn that they play them. Like, technically speaking, you could get 4 Decidueye and a Golisopod in play with Forest Giant Plants on turn 1. That's how busted of a card that is. And it got me thinking, okay, so grass has Forest Giant Plants. What other type would be the most broken if it had a Forest of Giant Plants like Stadium? And so I started thinking, and also what would it be called, I guess, if you guys want to get creative. And so I started thinking, and I ended up coming up with the fact that I think Metal would probably be the most broken deck right now in the standard format if it had a Forest of Giant Plants like Stadium, simply because Metagross is so ridiculously strong, and truly the only thing holding back Metagross to the extent that it is the fact that you have to wait to get up multiple Metagross. If you were able to get those things up immediately on turn 1 and start Geotech systeming, I mean immediately, like that would just be ridiculously busted, and Metagross would immediately go to tier 1. In fact, it potentially could even go tier 0. Actually, no, not quite tier 0 because Volcanion is still there. But I think Metagross, well, I know Metagross would immediately go tier 1 if it had a Forest of Giant Plants like Stadium. So my answer is going to be Metal types. If it got that, it would be busted, and also you can work with Bronzong in the expanded format, but that's to a lesser extent. And then what I think it might be called, like Steel Factory or something like that. I'm not very creative with naming, so yeah, let me know in the comment section down below what type do you think would be most busted with a Forest of Giant Plants like Stadium, and why, and also what would you call it. But anyway, onto the deck. Like I said, this is centered around Golisopod-GX, 210 HP, so I mean it's about standard for a Stage 1 GX with 3 attacks, and really all of these 3 attacks, I've only used 1 in the entirety that I have been testing in this deck, and that is First Impression. For 1 energy does 30. Honestly, 1 for 30 isn't bad. Like, it's not horrible. It's a decent 1 energy attack. I mean, it's not the end of the world. Tapu Bulu has that, but on a Stage 1, I guess it's a little bit mediocre if it was just 1 for 30. But if this Pokemon was on your bench and became your active this turn, this attack does 90 more damage. Okay, with things like Float Stone, Switch, Escape Rope, all that stuff, it is very easy to make Golisopod active in a turn. And 1 energy to do 120 damage, especially something that can be evolved immediately with Forest Giant Plants, that is absolutely ridiculous. The other attacks are not bad. Armor Press 3 for 100, and during your opponent's next turn, this Pokemon takes 20 less damage from attacks. I mean, it's okay. Maybe you could have something cheeky with like Assault Vest or something like that, but I've never used that attack. And then Crossing Cut GX, 3 energy, 150, switches with one of your bench Pokemon. Again, it's alright. It's not great, but First Impression actually makes this card pretty solid. And, I mean, even though it has mediocre, its 2 other attacks are pretty mediocre, it's still a very good mon just because of first impression. Now, I'm pairing it with Decidueye-GX simply because of Feather Arrow. Once during your turn, you may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. Just put a lot of different things in range of first impression with the combination of Decidueye and Golisopod. You can get knockouts on GXs. Turn 1, I'm really hoping I'm able to show that in the upcoming matches. But yeah, I mean, these two guys in my testing, they've just been so ridiculously good, because of Forest Giant Plants. And even though it won't be relevant in like 7 days, I still just wanted to show you guys this deck list because it is so much fun to use, and if you're able to abuse it, then absolutely go nuts. As for the rest of the cards, 2/2 of Shaymin and Lele. This deck actually is running Shaymin because this is kind of a turn 1 explosion type of deck. I mean, this really enjoys going through more cards, try to get as many Decidueye and Golisopod up turn 1 as possible. Well, more Decidueye because you really only need 1 Golisopod. But getting as many Decidueye up turn 1 as possible to Feather Arrow, knock out some of the low HP basics like Beldum, among others, and that's the only one, like Beldum, Eevee, there we go, Trubbish, those types of things with Decidueye. And then even late game, just setting GXs up for knockouts. Very strong, so we're running 4/4/4 of this line, just to have as many as possible and get those as consistently as possible. And then 3/3 of Wimpod and Golisopod, because let's be real, if our opponent knocks out 3 Golisopod, we lose the match anyway, and we're already running a pretty high number of mons to begin with. So yeah, that's what we're going with there. 2 Lele, just because Lele is OP AF, plain and simple. As for the searching, 2/4 of Level Ball and Ultra Ball. Level Ball to search out like the Wimpod, Rowlet, Dartrix, that type of thing. Ultra Ball just to get whatever we need in a certain situation. 2 Revitalizer, just kind of a cool combination with Ultra Ball. That way you can Ultra Ball, get rid of like a Dartrix and Decidueye, and then Revitalizer those right back into your hand. Grab a Rowlet with the Ultra Ball, and then if you have a Forest Giant Plants in play, you immediately have a whole line. So Revitalizer is very, very nice in this deck and very necessary for, well, not for Trainers Mail, only 2, just to kind of go through a couple more cards. We don't want to run too many because then Garbodor would be able to take advantage of us, but we want to run enough that, like, in a certain situation, we can just Trainers Mail and find something that we need. For VS Seeker, let us reuse all of our supporters for Forest Giant Plants because that's kind of what makes this deck work. And then as for these supporters, 4/2/2 of Sycamore and Guzma. Guzma is 1,000,000% better than Lysander in this deck because Golisopod relies on being on the bench, then being active in order to do its massive amount of damage. So Guzma is the choice right there to be able to Lysander something out and switch out Golisopod at the same time. 1 Acerola because Golisopod, with Forest Giant Plants, what you can do is Acerola up a heavily damaged Golisopod, put something active that has a Float Stone, play Wimpod, Golisopod, and the energy right back down, and then switch back into it, and boom, you have a 120 damage first impression from a fresh Golisopod. So this has some very cool synergy in this deck. 1 Choice Band to boost the damage output of first impression. We're not running too many because we prefer Float Stone, so that way we can freely switch back and forth between our Golisopod. But in some situations, Choice Band just boosts the damage output, and even though we do rely on Decidueye normally for the extra damage, having Choice Band as an option is always nice to even potentially get knockouts on the GX's turn 1, like I have said. Like first impression with the Choice Band plus 1 Decidueye knocks out a Lele. So I mean, that's just some little math for you. 3 Float Stones, we want a heavy amount of those, that way we have free retreat on a lot of stuff because we will be retreating quite a bit. Only 2 DCEs because, again, first impression is the attack that we go with in this deck, and it's really what this whole deck is centered around. However, DCEs are there for Decidueye to be able to Razor Leaf, and then also for Golisopod to be able to Armor Press and Crossing Cut GX just as an option, and also for Sky Return and Energy Drive to a lesser extent. And then 5 of the regular Grass Energy. We need to run only a small number because, again, we attack for a ton of damage with 1 energy, and we can run a kind of small number, but then dedicate the rest of those cards to consistently getting Golisopod and Decidueyes up. So, yeah, it's a pretty straightforward deck list. Let's go ahead and see it in action. Alrighty, we have got one against a Biswole 1-3-1-3 with a Psychic and normal deck. So, I mean, might be Garbodor. Probably Garbodor based on that type makeup of my opponent's deck. We are going to go for the coin flip, and we do unfortunately lose, which honestly isn't the worst thing in the world because I can potentially get a first impression off. And I start with some really, really nice stuff, actually. So what I'm going to be able to do, if I can get a Force of Giant Plants, is I can actually pretty much guaranteed get a Golisopod up if I can get a Force of Giant Plants, and then be able to first impression if I get an energy, because I can Float Stone up the Rowlet, and then retreat into Wimpod or Golisopod, whichever it is. And yes, I would like to draw a card, and I get a Trainers Mail, so that's actually going to be pretty handy. My opponent does start Drampa, so I mean, I'm going to be using Trainers Mail anyway. I mean, it's going to end up in my discard pile anyway, is what I'm saying. So it's not like I don't play the items. And yeah, we do see the Garbodor come down right there. Are we going to see a Trubbish? Yes, we do. So Garbodor could potentially be problematic. But if I can somehow like get something really good going in this matchup, that could actually be great. So let's Ultra Ball, get rid of both VS Seekers. I mean, this is going to be... I'm essentially trying to go all in on this early game. 3 Force Giant Plants, there's 5 energy, so I have a pretty good shot. Doesn't look like anything significant is prized, which is actually really nice too. So I know I'm going to need 2 Decidueye up if I want to have any dreams of OHKOing this Drampa. So what I'm going to do is actually, I could have grabbed the Choice Band, but I need the Forest right now. That way I can immediately get a Decidueye, because if I'm not going to be able to knock out the Drampa, at the very least I want to be able to get a good first impression off. And then let's Lele for a Sycamore to get a fresh hand of 7. And I mean, let's see what I can get. All I need is an energy to be able to attack, and I actually draw into the Choice Band and into a Dartrix and Ultra Ball. So this, I think I'm just going to try to go all in on this. So let's Ultra Ball, get rid of the Guzma and the Force of Giant Plants to grab a Decidueye. That way, at the very least, I can get a Decidueye going. Like, if I don't get another Dartrix up, then that's not a big deal, because I do have 1 Decidueye. I'll be able to Feather Arrow the Drampa next turn to knock it out. So, I mean, I'm in a good spot, and wow. I'm actually going to be able to do this. This is fantastic. So what I'm going to do is actually hold on to the Revitalizer for now. What I could have done is actually Ultra Balled away both the Dartrix and Decidueye to be able to grab another like Dartrix to get set up. But I mean, at this point, I'm going to be able to actually knock out this Drampa GX turn 1 with 1 energy, thanks to both Decidueye and First Impression and Choice Band, and that was honestly amazing. I'm so glad that this was the first match we got. Oh, that was so perfect. So yeah, that was a pretty you know, amazing first match, and wow, that could not have gone better. But again, way too short, so let's go ahead and try to find another one with this deck. Alrighty, we've got another one against the Luis EXE, which, I mean, kind of... Oh, it looks like a Rainbow Road type of deck, just because the fairies and the other typings. But I mean, I could be wrong. It could just be kind of a hodgepodge of stuff. But that would actually be really interesting if this was Rainbow Road. And also my opponent has the advantage, so really hoping we get to be able to take a few... Hopefully we get to be able to take the game so that we get the couple extra ladder points. And yeah, the game's taking a little while. There we go. And so my opponent is going to call the coin flip. We do win it, and I will want to go first. Yeah, I'm going to want to go first just so I can get like as many Decidueye set up for turn 1. And unfortunately, I start Shaymin, which is kind of, I mean, obviously the last thing you want to start. But you know what? We're going with it. And yeah, we see Bisharp, and if this isn't Rainbow Road, I'm just going to be shocked. Because, I mean, we see Fairy Energy, and we see dual typing, so I'm pretty darn convinced that this is going to be Rainbow Road in any shape or form. So, yeah, I mean, as long as he doesn't get the... Wow, so I get, like, a bunch of extra cards, and I get a Rowlet, so this is going to be a pretty explosive first turn, because I also have the Force of Giant Plants. What I'm immediately going to do, though, is grab Wimpod. If I can actually get 3 Decidueye set up, I can win this turn, but I grabbed Wimpod just because, I mean, I don't really think I need to win this turn as long as I can just stream consistent. Yeah. If I'm able to stream consistent first impressions of 120 damage, I think I should be able to win. So I'm going to grab another Rowlet. What do I have? Let's Ultra Ball, get rid of the DCE and the Trainers Mail just to guarantee myself that I have something. Let's grab a third Rowlet, actually. I could grab Lele, or I could grab Shaymin to try to explode a little more, but I think at this point I'm just going to grab another Rowlet. That way I can start evolving these guys potentially. I mean, if I'm able to evolve all three of these Rowlet into Decidueye, I win, but odds are I won't be able to, yeah. So we see right there that I was not able to, so let's go ahead and get rid of the N and the Decidueye, because I mean I have the Revitalizer in my hand. Grab a Dartrix. So once again, so that I can just go ahead and get these things up and running at the very least. Let's DC up the Shaymin because I feel like I'm just going to Sky Return this coming turn in order to knock out the Pawniard because my opponent's not going to be able to do anything. So yeah, Feather Arrow. And then, yeah, I'm just going to call it a turn. I have an energy in my hand for a Golisopod. I have a Dartrix. I'm going to be able to Sky Return next turn, take a prize, and the Joltik does come down. So if I'm able to get two other Decidueye set up, I will be able to take a prize on the Joltik as well as the Pawniard. Remoraid comes down. Is my opponent... so he is... Okay. So really, my opponent doesn't have anything at all. What I am going to do is just immediately play this energy onto Wimpod and then Sycamore away my hand. At this point, I think I can play it a little bit slower because I really don't need... I don't need anything else. Let's Feather Arrow. I could try to start knocking out the Joltik for next turn, or I could take the knockout on Pawniard this turn with Feather Arrow plus Sky Return. I think the play is to Feather Arrow and then Sky Return. Knock out the Pawniard, take my prize, and then hopefully my opponent doesn't have much of anything, because I will have Golisopod. And I'm just going to promote a Rowlet. Yeah, I'm going to promote a Rowlet because I do have Guzma to be able to switch out. Just like if my opponent plays down a Xerneas and he doesn't have a way of evolving Joltik, that's fine. And I do have the Forest of Giant Plants in my hand as well to counter this Parallel City. Interesting that my opponent's playing Parallel City and Rainbow Road instead of Skyfield. But I mean, I guess if he's running enough dual typing, then that helps. Alright, so we just take the win. I guess my opponent didn't have anything at all, and then I would have been able to just easily knock out Joltik potentially, and then with Feather Arrows, and then knock out Remoraid with Golisopod. So yeah, that was game number 2. Have yet to get a pretty good one, but either way, let's go ahead and try to find another one with this deck. Alrighty, we have found a third game against Van Lig 123 with, if this is what I... Okay, so it's not going to be... Okay, it's not Latios Donk, because that... Well, no, that's only an expanded. My opponent is going to go first, so I'm actually interested to see what my opponent is playing. I start off with not a good hand. I only have 2... I mean, okay, starting off 2 Rowlet is not bad. But the fact that I'm not gonna... that I don't have a starter yet. Double Dragon. Is this... What is this? Because I really... What... Dragons... Is it like Garbodor Giratina or something like that? I legitimately have no idea. I am gonna get a mulligan card. Hopefully it's something good. Well, it's a Wimpod, which... I mean, that's not bad. No way. This is a Noivern Garbodor deck. That's scary, actually. I need to make sure that I take out... Because Garbotoxin's actually going to be a big problem. Trashalanche, not too much if I'm able to minimize the number of items I play. But regardless, this is going to be kind of... Well, I'm hoping I can top deck like a Forest of Giant Plants. Because if I can do that, then with a Guzma, I should be able to, well, I'll be able to bring up my Golisopod and immediately take a prize. So I think I'm just going to have to try to play this slow and steady, just switching between Golisopod, playing only a few items here and there, and then going with that. So we do see the energy come down onto the Noibat. Yeah, this is going to be kind of... Could potentially be tricky if I play a ton of items, but Noivern I'm not worried about. And that's... Wow, that was the best possible top deck for me. Because otherwise I just have an unplayable hand, and there's nothing I can do except for pass. But what I'm going to do is I actually think... Let's take out... What's going to be more annoying? I think the Garbodor is going to be more annoying because Noivern, I mean, yeah, it can lock out items, but I think, I mean, if I'm just going to be able to two-hit KO it, so we can either lock out items or special energy, and if I'm just going to be able to, like, two-hit KO them repeatedly with first impressions, then I'm not too horribly worried about this, because the only way they can two-hit KO me is by locking out special energy, which doesn't lock out items, and then I can just get Decidueye set up, and I can just rotate between Golisopods, just feather arrowing everywhere, and I think that'll be my game plan. So yeah, able to take a prize, actually able to take the lead. I get an Ultra Ball, which means I'm going to be able to get Shaymin or Lele, whichever one that I decide that I want. And yeah, I think I'm in a good spot. I think I'm in a definitely good spot. My opponent is going to go ahead and Lele, please N, or he's just going to go for Wally. That's honestly fine too. So with his Noivern right now, he's in a tricky spot, because with his Noivern, if he's going to Lele for a Wally, he's going to get a Noivern, yeah. So he can either lock out items, or he can lock out special energy. If he locks out items, I attach a DCE and then just hit him really, really hard with Armor Press. If he tries to two-hit KO me, then guess what? I just have the ability to still Ultra Ball and then go from there and potentially get another Golisopod set up. Unfortunately, Armor Press is not going to keep me from being knocked out, just because that does a little bit too much. I mean, if I had Armor Pressed, then he Sonic Volumed, then I Armor Pressed again, then I could avoid it. But it's just doing a little bit too much right now. I even top deck a Lele. So what I'm going to do, Ultra Ball, get rid of the DCE and the Decidueye. Probably grab... Do I want to grab a Shaymin, or do I want to just grab a Dartrix or another Wimpod? This is kind of tricky right here. So yeah, there's Sycamore, there's only one DCE left, but I mean, I only run two anyway. So what I'm going to do actually is grab a Dartrix, start getting those guys set up in the background, and then try to grab... let's grab a Sycamore with this, obviously, because it gets me a fresh hand of 7 cards and would only get me 5. I don't really need to Guzma anything if I... Yeah, there's really no reason for me to. And this can work. So let's grab Wimpod, play down the other Dartrix. I have a Decidueye in the discard pile that I can Revitalize her. Let's play an energy onto the Wimpod. All I need is a Golisopod and a... All I need is a Golisopod and a Float Stone in order to be able to go into my other Golisopod and then knock out not knock out, but hit this Noivern for a ton of damage. So let's see if I draw into it. Unfortunately, I do not. So let's Ultra Ball, get rid of the Guzma and the Force of Giant Plants to grab another, I think just another grab another Golisopod. I have the Decidueye in hand. And unfortunately, I'm just going to have to hit this guy for 30 damage this turn. I will be able to spread a little bit more with Feather Arrow, but yeah, let's grab Sycamore in case my opponent tries to item lock me next turn. And then let's Feather Arrow the Noivern. I mean, I'm going to be able to hit it for 70 damage this turn, which actually could come into handy, because it will set up a knockout with 1 Feather Arrow plus a First Impression, which, plus a 120 damage First Impression, which is all I need. Or an Armor Press plus 2 Feather Arrows if I choose to go that route, although odds are he's going to Sonic Volume me, which is going to knock out my Golisopod. And either way, I actually think I'm in a really good spot. My opponent ends me, which is honestly even better because I get a hand of 5 cards as opposed to a hand of 2, although if I don't get a supporter, then that's worse. But it's actually a lot better because of what I drew into. I draw into a Float Stone, which means I can just play... I can just slap it onto Decidueye and then retreat out into Golisopod and then knock out my opponent's Noivern. So I don't have many items in the discard pile just yet, so I'm not too worried about Trash Lanch Garbodor. Garbotoxin could be a problem, but he is just going to Sonic Volume, knock out my Golisopod, and that's the situation we're at right now. I'm going to promote the Decidueye, like I said. Maybe if I can get a Wimpod or some way... Wow. So my top decks are extremely on point this game. What I'm going to go ahead and do is grab both of those with Revitalizer. I mean, I really only needed the Wimpod to grab another Decidueye. But I mean, I grabbed the other one just because, I mean, I had to. And then I think, do I want a Guzma or do I want a Sycamore? I think just Sycamore, because that allows me to get a knockout on the Noivern. I get another Float Stone, which I'm going to play onto this Golisopod, which I'm going to attack with this turn. Let's Feather Arrow the Noivern once. Yeah, let's Feather Arrow the Noivern once. Play the energy onto the other Golisopod. And then, where do I want to put the others? I think I want to put it on Lele. Or do I want to try to stock up the other Noibat to set it up for later? Because he's obviously going to attack with Noibat. Noivern's a bigger problem than Lele, so I'm just going to go ahead and start putting damage counters on the Noibat. That way I can potentially knock it out with First Impressions later plus Feather Arrows and go from there. So yeah, we are able to knock out the Noivern, get a couple prizes, and I saved the Float Stone just in case my opponent tries to stall on one of my Decidueyes. Although, hindsight 2020, I don't know. I still think holding on to the Float Stone's the better play, because it will allow me free retreat with Decidueye, Lele, Shaymin, or whatever. I mean, I could have played it on the other Golisopod, but then that's 3 Float Stones on board, which could potentially be problematic. Like if my opponent has a Field Blower right now, is able to get rid of both Float Stones that I have on board, I just slap a Float Stone onto my active Golisopod, and I still have a 120 damage First Impression that I can go with. So I'm not too worried about that. What's cool is I am in a prize trade right now that allows me to, if my opponent is able to get a Garbotoxin Garbodor up, that allows me to Lysander or Guzma that thing up, knock it out, and still just be in a 2-prize game, which is 1 knockout on a Noivern or Lele. So I'm actually in a pretty good spot in terms of that. We do see the Choice Band come down. It really doesn't do a whole lot in terms of the math on Golisopod. I mean, I guess unless I did like an armor break or something like that. But what I am going to do right here is play a Float Stone onto this Golisopod. Don't want to do that. Do I want to just go ahead and play it? I think so. Because what I can do, Guzma is there. I have the option of bringing out that Garbodor that my opponent just got set up and then still having access to Feather Arrow, which I think I'm going to do. Let's go ahead and Guzma, bring up the Garbodor. Let's bring up my other Golisopod and then just knock this thing out with First Impression. And yeah, now I have 2 Golisopods that I can go back and forth on. All I need are 2 prizes to be able to win the game. Feather Arrows will allow me to Feather Arrows will allow me to set up Noivern and Lele for knockouts. And I'm just in a phenomenal spot. I mean, I would rather not have Shaymin on the board, but because of what it got me, Shaymin was definitely worth playing down. We do see another Psychic Energy come down. I think, yeah, he's not able to yet. He's not able to lock me out of items just yet. So what I think I'm going to do, start Feather Arrowing the Lele. I can't quite win the game this turn, even with Guzma. So I'm going to Feather Arrow the Lele. I think Feather Arrow it, get it set up for a knockout next. Yeah, get it set up for a Feather Arrow knockout next turn. I'm going to bring that thing up. This way, unless my opponent has a way of getting rid of it, of getting it off the board, I will win next turn. And there we go. So yeah, now it is just 1 Feather Arrow away. Even if my opponent throws a Fighting Fury Belt on it, I guess that would avoid the Feather Arrow knockouts. But I have plenty of draw supporters anyway, so I'm in a fine spot. Like okay, we do see the Acerola, so I might have wanted to put damage onto the Noivern as well. But, I mean, Noivern's going to come down. My opponent... Yeah, I mean, he gets Wonder Tag, but he doesn't get to use the supporter this turn because he did play Acerola, so I'm just fine. Like, I'm pretty sure I have the win on deck. We see that my opponent grabs Sycamore as his draw supporter, so he cannot even disrupt my hand. And I think I'm good. I honestly think I'm good to go. He does put an energy on Lele. I'm going to spread out my damage a little bit more, put 20 onto the Lele, and then I think... Yeah, and then put 20 onto the Noivern. This way, when I First Impression, it's in range of 2 Feather Arrows. And then... Do I want to play the Trainers Mail? Actually, you know what? How much is in my discard pile? All 4 VS Seekers are there, so I think... Do I want a Sycamore? Yeah. Thin my deck out, and I know that my opponent can't disrupt my hand. There's a Choice Band, so I'm going to start powering up something. Actually, no, I'm just going to hold on to the... No, I need to start powering up Golisopod to potentially hit for 150 in the situation that I need to. So let's go ahead and First Impression. Noivern is now in range of 2 Feather Arrows, knocking it out. Lele is in range of First Impression plus 2 Feather Arrows next turn. So basically, my opponent cannot get game off of the board, is what I was trying to go for. So he will Ultra Ball, gets rid of Garbodor and a Choice Band. I mean, luckily Garbodor hasn't come into play much at all this game. Grabs Noibat. And, I mean, he's going to play Sycamore, which means he can't play Acerola or Hexmaniac. Or Wally to shut off my abilities, so I don't think there's a way my opponent can avoid losing this turn. Because even if he hits me with Noivern, yeah, I mean, we do see the Double Dragon come down, but even if he hits me, I still have 2 Feather Arrows that'll be able to knock out his Noivern. So, yeah, I think pretty sure I just win at this point. I mean, he's gonna hit me for a ton of damage, but it really will not matter at all, as I can just use 2 Feather Arrows from Decidueye to knock out Noivern no matter where it goes. Like, unless he has a random Max Potion, which I really don't see him having, I think I just win this game at this point. And the fact that my opponent is... I think that my opponent's trying to think out every single possible out, but I don't think there are any. Because no matter what he does, yeah, he is just going to go for a Sonic Volume. Like, no matter what my opponent did right there, even if he somehow managed to get, like, a knockout or something like that, I had two Float Stones on board. That way I could just promote Decidueye, retreat out into Golisopod, and then First Impression for 120, no matter what my opponent went into. And, yeah, my opponent just attacked me. I knocked him out with the Feather Arrows, and, hey, we complete the daily challenge, so not bad. But yeah, so that was that deck. I hope you guys enjoyed, even though Forest of Giant Plants is going to be gone in a matter of days. I still wanted to give Golisopod Decidueye a shot, and it was a really, really fun deck that you won't be able to use in a couple days, so use it while you can. And regardless, hope you guys enjoyed. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff, and this is Styx signing out. Why not? See you guys.